Hello, friends. Welcome to Peace and Plenty in 20. This is episode number 14. Last week, I missed you. Hopefully, you missed me. It was my big 50th birthday. I had just come off of a 5-day trip to the Bahamas and actually wound up getting sick, which I am, believe it or not, still recovering from almost a week later. But I wanted to show up today and follow up to the last episode we had, which was episode 13 with Jess Diamond talking about parenting 20 somethings. So, on that episode, we explored parenting from her perspective as a coach of 20 somethings and my perspective as a parent of teenage girls. But today, I wanted to return to an interview that I did back in 2021 that's going to offer a very powerful second voice to this conversation. And this interview was with Julie Lythcott-Haims, who is the author of How to Raise an Adult. She has gone on then to write another book about adulting called Your Turn. She's also a former dean at Stanford University. And this interview with her was one of the most powerful, insightful experts I've ever spoken with about parenting. And even though, again, this happened back at my Midlife Mama Conference 4 years ago, the message is just as important and powerful today. Messages like doing everything for your kids does not make you a better mom. That letting go of control actually can build stronger, more resilient kids. And that peace in your parenting actually starts with the permission to release that pressure. So, without further ado, let's dive in. I'm going to share the interview with you, and I hope that you take as much from it that I did. I just want to point out this is only a small snippet of that interview, since this is Peace and Plenty in 20, not Peace and Plenty in 40. But I will give you the option to access the entire interview at the end if you're interested. So let's take it away. Thank you to my assistant that just reminded me to do that. Because this would have been a bad one to miss the recording of. Let me just tell you, for those of you who don't know Julie Lythcott-Haims or have never heard of How to Raise an Adult, Break Free of the Overparenting Trap, and Prepare Your Kid for Success, you need to get this ASAP. I mean it. And I, as you know, my audience knows I love to research and read. And when I heard you speak at, I believe it was the California Women's Conference.
Yes.
I was so blown away. As soon as I got off the conference, I ordered the book. I downloaded it on Audible so my husband could listen to it, and was like, we are doing it all wrong is basically what I said. But it is so refreshing to read your words. And I think it's extra refreshing because you yourself as a parent and you as a dean at Stanford have such background and firsthand experience to this phenomenon of helicopter parenting.
Janine, thank you so much for having me to be with you and your amazing community. And let me just get real clear at the start. I'm not judging anybody. I have been down this path. I am on this path still myself. I know the things I know in large part because I worked with other people's kids who were in college and they were overmanaged, overhelped, couldn't do enough for themselves. And I got really annoyed and I would tell the parents, stop. Then I realized I was one of those parents with my kids who were younger at the time. My kids were 8 and 10 when I had my, oh, I've been doing it all wrong moment. And now my kids are 19 and 21, and we're still working out some repatterning so that they can have more agency and I can be less controlling and micromanaging, and they can have more resilience and I can be less worried about their feelings. And I mean, I care about their feelings, but I have over cared such that I haven't let them have their feelings. I've tried to make it all go away or tiptoe, and so anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's so much I've learned, and I'm simply trying to pass it on to everybody else.
And you do it so eloquently. So I'd love to start kind of how you do in the book with things have changed so much, right? Parenting styles and the methods that we use. What were some of the shifts, or let me rephrase that. What were some of the things that caused these shifts? What were some of the possible causes that when you were doing your research, you realized, you know what, this happened and this happened, and all of a sudden people started getting afraid, right?
Yeah. So I'm just going to hold up a little visual since we're on Zoom and Facebook. Like the 1980s, everything changed in the 1980s. The kids who started to grow up, little kids in the 1980s, had a very different childhood. Here are 5 examples. And they became the first set of college students in the late 90s who had parents who had to still micromanage their lives because they always had, because this is what childhood looked like in the early to mid 1980s. 5 things in no particular order of importance. I'll try to do them chronologically. Um, Stranger Danger was born in 1983. Big television movie. Everybody watched it because there was no internet. It was just what was on TV. A movie that just, whoa, made us go, oh my gosh, Stranger Danger. And we began to just curate childhood accordingly. So kids were never by themselves, never alone, never. Stranger Danger was born. The Playdate was born in 1984, maybe a function of Stranger Danger, but also moms were going into the workforce in record numbers. Dads weren't exactly staying at home. In the 70s, kids were home alone when that happened. In the 80s, it was no, kids always have to be in an organized environment. So we had to arrange play. You couldn't just let the kids play by themselves after school or, under the watch of somebody at a distance. We had to sort of have a play date. Someone had to be there managing it. So we began to manage play. In the same time period, early 80s, we began the ribbons and trophies and awards and certificates for everything approach to building up esteem in children. So those certificates just for being on the soccer team, not for necessarily being good at it. And so that was about, and that came with parents on the sidelines of every practice. My parents used to come if I was in a championship game, they might come. Parents started going to every game. Got to be there, got to watch, got to show up, got to go to every practice, got to applaud. Yay, great job, right? So all of that. And then we got a lot safer in cars and bicycles. Every state, and it takes a lot for every state to pass similar laws. Every state in the mid 80s passed laws around you got to wear a seatbelt, you got to be in a car seat at certain ages, and bike helmet laws. And those laws rolled into effect. So we got safer, and that saved lives, but led to a mentality of we need to bubble wrap the child, we need to bubble wrap the house, every corner, every potentially problematic thing. We began to prepare the road for the child, is what I mean, instead of letting the child, preparing the child to thrive in the road, not in the road. It's a metaphor. Prepare the road for the, you prepare the child for the road instead of preparing the road for the child. And then finally, this book came out, A Nation at Risk, saying American teenagers weren't doing as well vis-a-vis their international counterparts academically. And we needed to beef up our academics and more testing and more teaching to the test. And parents were hovering around that. So from malls and sidewalks and playgrounds to play itself to the soccer games to the homework to just looking after their safety at all times, childhood was now really well attended by grown-ups, constantly watching, constantly there, constantly worried, frankly, and taking care of every little thing. And that appeared to work. This is why we still have, right? It began in the 80s. We didn't begin to appreciate the harm of it because it looks like it helps. It wasn't until these kids grew up and couldn't do things for themselves, couldn't think for themselves, make a choice, solve a problem without consulting us, couldn't kind of go within to deal with how do I feel, what do I want, what do I need, what can I do? And instead, we're just sort of these helpless people. We didn't see the effects until they were starting to be grown. And so that's what has been the aha discovery of the 2000s. Oh, wait a minute. We parent this way. We do everything for them. It turns out they can't do for themselves. We've forgotten that our job as parents is to ensure that our kids can be independent of us one day, meaning capable of fending for themselves. Not that we'll stop loving them, but simply we need to know, like, my kids got this. They can, barring a significant disability. Adulthood means you're more or less responsible for yourself.
Yeah. And you talk about in the book that there really are consequences of overparenting, both for children and parents. Can you speak to the consequence a little bit?
Yeah. So the kid emerges typically lacking the skills to just take care of business, take care of body, their own, looking after the self, doctor's appointments, refilling medication, just managing the self, taking care of bills. They haven't been expected to take care of their own deadlines and applications and forms and things. So they have a hard time paying their bills and being accountable out there in the real world. Belongings, they haven't had practice being responsible for their stuff. We've always dropped everything to go rescue them, to bring them the forgotten stuff, the homework, the backpack, the sporting equipment. So they lack the skill to, oh, I got to remember this. I'm responsible for this, because they just haven't had practice. This then harms them in college. It harms them in the workplace, where they're expected to kind of get themselves around and ask questions, ask for help, but, take care of business. The worst harm, I think, is to their mental health. Because
Mm.
what's happening is, in doing everything for them, or reminding constantly, or rescuing, or making it out to be our situation that has to be dealt with, their life becomes our work. We're depriving them of developing agency, or a related term is self-efficacy. These come from the fields of psychology. I'm not a psychologist, but I've read about this. Which are developed when we do the work of life. We see, oh, I'm capable. Oh, I can. I just did this. I can try the next thing. And we prevent them from developing resilience, which is sort of the sense of, I can cope when things go badly. And we deprive them of that by fixing everything and making everything smoothed over. And so we've sort of interrupted the otherwise natural development of agency, self-efficacy, by stepping in and doing stuff for them. The thing got done, but they didn't do it. And their mind somehow knows this. And that leads, studies show, there's a greater propensity for a child to have anxiety and depression if they've been raised this way.
Mhm.
So that's the harm to them. No workplace, or fewer workplace skills, bad mental health. The harm to us is we had no life. And
Well,
I think you care about that. I care about that. When did adult life become micromanage the life of children? I mean, that's what has happened. And to be a good mother, to be a good father, a good parent, is now do everything for your child. Well, how are you supposed to have a healthy adult life? How are you supposed to model a healthy adult life for your kid if all you're doing is constantly worrying, nagging, reminding, stressed about your kids' every single piece of homework? When are you're supposed to have a life that includes work and relationships and hobbies and children? But when you make your child your everything, there is no room for all these other things, just to be a healthy whole self. So it's harmful for everybody. And that's why we got to stop.
such a good point too, in our own mental health, and then we wonder why we're so stressed out. And I love the term that you use, because it's so on point. Concierge parent, that's exactly what we are. We're on call. I'll fix it, I'll take care of it, I'll bring you whatever you need. And I was thinking yesterday, as I got an email, my daughter can't have her phone in school, but like, she'll send me an email message whenever she feels an emotion. She emails me, and all of a sudden I was like, I'm like her emotional concierge.
Mm.
So not how do I not do that? That's, I guess, my question. I
Yeah.
know it's important for her to feel the pain and to work through it. And when
Yeah.
she's reaching out to me, am I being cruel for ignoring it?
So how old is your kid? Just curious.
16.
How, say again?
She's 16 years old.
It's reminding me, this example, a beautiful example, is reminding me of folks in the mental health center at Stanford, clinicians, therapists, who would say their first effort when college students were coming in with the problem, with a worry, um, in this new milieu, was to try to just put a pause on their impulse to text, call, or email a parent,
Mhm.
and just pause that, because you actually have a great capacity within you, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, that will grow stronger if you access it. Okay. So you're going to help your 16-year-old not be that 18-year-old who has to turn to you constantly. So it's not about ignoring it. It is about sit and listen is what I like to call it. So they've got a problem and you're just sitting and listening by text. You're offering empathy. I'm so sorry that happened. Are you okay? That must not feel very good. You're just trying to use active listening to reflect back what they've said. You're not trying to fix it. It isn't yours to fix or handle unless it's a true emergency and they are incapable. What you're trying to signal is your mood, your feelings are valid. I care about that. I care about you. And you're just sitting with them. And then you might say after um, the empathy moment has passed, you know, um, how do you think you're going to handle it, honey? And that's a way to signal, I think you're capable of handling it, right? How do you think you're going to handle it, honey? Now, there's a snarky version of that if it's not about feeling like something sad or bad has happened, but more like an oops, like the kid has left the backpack at school, whether it's fourth grade or eighth grade or 12th grade, or college. Like, I left my work. I can't,
Right.
you can sort of empathize. Oh, that must not feel very good. Oh, that's so frustrating when that happens. I know I've been there. Pause. Sounds like a problem an 8-year-old can solve, though. Sounds
Right.
like a problem a 12-year-old can solve. Again, you're signaling, I think you can. You're also implicitly signaling, not my problem, yours.
Right.
And the more we can get them to own their own stuff, their own choices and problem solving and doing things, the more capable they're going to be. And it's not about withdrawing love at all. It is very loving to be, you empathize around the stuff and then you signal, but I think you can. For 80% of the stuff that comes our kids' way, they can handle it. And handling it might simply be, in the case of the forgotten backpack, it may be that the only thing they can construct at that point by way of a solution is a very respectful email of apology to their teacher that they write. Dear teacher so and so, I'm sorry I left my backpack at school today. That means I don't have my homework. Um, is there anything you can tell me that I should do? Or, please let me know if there's anything I can do. Otherwise, I will just try to remember my backpack next time. That is a very respectful, mature way to behave, and teaching kids how to be accountable when they didn't take care of business. That's a huge thing we're supposed to be teaching them instead of rescuing them so they never learn those things.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know about you, but even just that short clip still resonates so deeply with me today. There's something about the way that Julie just speaks. She's direct, she's compassionate, no fluff, that cuts right through all that noise and the pressure that we carry as moms, and she gets it as a mom. Um, and I love that she's walked the walk and she's done the research, and not just the research in the books, but she's actually, has the lived experience, both as the former dean and as a mom of two. Um, and that was just the beginning. So if you want to see our full 40-minute interview, we go even deeper into the emotional and practical shifts that can help you parent with more connection and have more confidence and really have a guide for the way forward. And that's what Julie and her book have done for me. And if you're nodding along and craving more of that, grounded, real energy talk, all you have to do is click the link in the description here to get instant access. You just put in your name and your email, and I will send you the link to the full interview with Julie. So do that now, and I'll be back next week with more peace and plenty. Have a beautiful day and week, you guys. Peace.